Member for Powell River Sunshine Coast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. November is Indigenous Disability Awareness Month and was first proclaimed in 2015 by the previous government. The purpose of this proclamation is to increase awareness of the challenges facing Indigenous people with disabilities, to encourage inclusivity in every community, to remind policymakers and leaders to be aware of some of the unique barriers that face Indigenous people, and maybe most importantly, to make sure that people with disabilities are aware of and have access to the programs and services from which they might benefit. If this awareness leads to better well-being among people with disabilities and their families, and results in more citizens participating fully in their communities, then this awareness is an important starting point. Many Indigenous communities are rural and remote. The long distances from services and programs and the relative lack of infrastructure are compounded when you're living with a disability or caring for someone with one. Location isn't always the only barrier to accessing services. People living in urban centres can also be isolated or disconnected from their usual support networks, or they might simply be unaware of programs and services that exist in their communities. There's an award-winning charitable society in British Columbia that since 1991 has been a key resource for Indigenous people in the province. The BC Aboriginal Network on Disability Society, more conveniently known as BCANS, provides assistance on matters of healthcare, financial information, and resource support. In 2017, BCANS presented the United Nations Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in Geneva. Many of the recommendations were subsequently recommended to Canada for action, including the recognition of this month annually. To help make BC a truly inclusive province, government is working with BCANS and others on accessibility legislation for which public consultation is ongoing. We're continuing to lead the way. BCANS has provided all members of pins to wear, so if you're asked, you can refer people to their website and get information that might be of assistance to their constituents. If you're an Indigenous person living with a disability or an organization providing community services and requiring information about programs and services, BCANS will be able to assist. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.